Are we waiting for the DOLE officials, John?
Yes, we're still waiting for them to dial in or to connect.
Okay. In the interest of time, would you want to begin the discussions and address some of the more important issues? Those
Sure.
at least we could address until our DOLE friends come along.
Okay. Thanks, Attorney Rico. And good afternoon again, everyone. I'm John Zuniga, a partner from the Quisumbing Torres Law Office and a member of PMAP's Labor Policy Reforms and Industrial Relations Committee. I am your moderator for today's webinar on Q&A on DOLE COVID-19 pronouncements, which is hosted by the People Management Association of the Philippines. So maybe I'll just introduce later our guests from the Department of Labor and Employment. In the meantime, I'd like to introduce the two distinguished members of our PMAP's LPRIR committee who will also join us today. Attorney Rico de Guzman, a senior partner of ACRA Law and 2006 PMAP president.
Good afternoon.
And Attorney Noel Balsicas, the Labor Relations Manager of San Miguel Corporation.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So due to the enhanced community quarantine, all of us are in the different parts of the Philippines. I'm currently in Antipolo, and I understand Attorney Noel is in Cebu.
Yeah.
So in case there are technical difficulties, please bear with us. As of this morning, we have more than 2,000 participants signed up for this webinar. So while we are aware of the limitations of the Zoom app, we opted not to close the registration. And to accommodate everyone, we are currently streaming on PMAP's Facebook page. So if you are encountering problems accessing the Zoom link, please go to Facebook and search for the page of PMAP, that is People Management Association of the Philippines. Or you may also look for at PMAP 1956. You may still send your questions using the Zoom chat box, or for those watching on Facebook, you may also post your questions or comments on our Facebook page. So while we are waiting for our DOLE representatives and before we start with the Q&A, maybe I can start by sharing some slides on some background to understand the context related to the Department of Labor and Employment's COVID-19 related pronouncements. You can just give me a few seconds to share my slides. Okay, so my presentation will be composed of 4 parts. A brief description of the enhanced community quarantine guidelines, which I suppose everyone is already familiar by now. Flexible work arrangements under labor advisories recently issued by the Department of Labor and Employment. Some provisions of the advisories on payment of employees during the ECQ period, and guidelines for eligibility for the COVID assistance under DOLE Department Order 209. So let me start with the ECQ guidelines. I think almost everyone is familiar with the ECQ guidelines, with the declaration sometime in effective March 17 of an ECQ all over Luzon. Pursuant to the memorandum issued by the Office of the President, so we are under an enhanced community quarantine from midnight of March 17 to 12 a.m. of April 13. And among others, private establishments are supposed to, subject to certain exceptions, are supposed to cease their operations. So that means no work within the premises of these establishments, unless they are able to adopt a work from home scheme or other flexible work arrangements recommended by the Department of Labor and Employment. Of course, this is subject to certain exceptions. The first exception are private establishments providing basic necessities and activities subject to stringent social distancing and the adoption of a skeletal workforce. So this includes public markets, supermarkets, groceries, drugstores. In the quarantine area is still allowed, and security personnel of the establishments within the quarantine area are likewise allowed to travel therein. So the second exception are business outsourcing, process outsourcing companies and export-oriented industries who may remain open subject to the additional condition that their personnel will be given temporary accommodation arrangements. Pursuant to subsequent government guidelines, they were given until March 22 to transfer the necessary equipment to facilitate work from home arrangements, as well as to arrange for the temporary accommodation of their employees. So in anticipation that an employer's skeletal workforce will be asked to why they are working or traveling, so the employees are supposed to present identification cards containing the company address or the place of work, as well as their place of residence. As an alternative, they can also present certificates of employment issued by the company which state the place of work and that the company is exempted from the quarantine. So these are stated in DOLE Labor Advisory number 11, series of 2020, or the supplemental guidelines relative to remedial measures in view of the ongoing COVID outbreak. So if you want to get more details, you can also take a look at the website of the Department of Labor, and you can see there's certain various labor advisories and department orders of the Department of Labor and Employment. So among others, there's Labor Advisory number 1 regarding suspension of work in the private sector by reason of natural or man-made calamities. There's also Labor Advisory number 4, or the guidelines on the COVID-19 prevention and control at the workplace. They also have the Labor Advisory number 4, or guidelines on the implementation of flexible work arrangements as remedial measure to the ongoing outbreak of COVID-19, including supplemental guidelines as embodied in Labor Advisory number 11. Of course, they also recently issued Department Order 209, or the guidelines on the adjustment measures program for affected workers due to COVID-19. So this includes the camp financial assistance of 5,000 pesos to affected workers. They also have Department Order number 210, or the guidelines for the implementation of the Tulong Panghanap Buhay, or the TUPAD program, which involves the employing affected workers for the disinfection and sanitation of houses, dwellings, and the immediate vicinity of their houses, subject to the payment of wages. So as I mentioned earlier, under Department Order, or sorry, Department DOLE Advisory number 9-20. So the DOLE is requesting employers not to consider termination of employment right away if they can help it, and just implement certain flexible work arrangements. So among others, the advisory mentions reduction of work hours or work days, rotation of workers. Of course, we are talking about establishments who are still allowed to operate or are able to implement a work from home program. They also mention forced leave. But of course, these flexible work arrangements are not limited to the list or the enumeration under Department Order 9-20. The employer can also adopt other flexible work arrangements, including suspension of operations, which under current rules should not last for 6 months. Otherwise, the employer should dismiss the employee, for instance, on the ground of redundancy and pay them separation pay. Maybe we can ask our DOLE representatives later on whether Attorney Rico?
Yeah, if I may, I think you hit the nail there because this department advisory number 9 particularly, and particularly this enumeration of arrangements is probably the key measure that everyone will have to take stock of, no? And would you want to open the floor already? I mean, in the interest of time, to the questions, they might be in light of this advisory.
Sure. I'm not sure though if our DOLE representatives are already on the line. Maybe in the meantime, we can address the questions from the participants.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
But
I understand, do we have a list of questions that were already submitted previously by the participants? Maybe, I think, Attorney Rico, you can start with some of the questions that have been raised by our members, and then we can maybe take turns in addressing these queries.
Can you read can you help me by reading out the questions that I need to answer? Because I'm sorry, I'm using my handheld, and the questions given me are in really fine print, no? John, pasensya na kayo sa medyo senior.
I think some of the questions include employees receiving honorarium. Can they also be part of the DOLE cash assistance under DOLE Department Order 209?
Employees receiving honorarium. When you talk of an honorarium, there appears to be an arrangement that is not an employer-employee relationship. No, in most cases, you give an honorarium to somebody who probably is a consultant or is a speaker at a session, and there is no salary that is given. And so in that case, if there is an absence of an employment relationship, then they might not be qualified, no?
Good point, Attorney Rico, because as of now, Department Order number 209 applies only to those who are well, in fact, it's supposedly it's the employer who should file the applications on behalf of the employees, and they apply to workers who are either not receiving their compensation because of flexible work arrangements, or because their employment has been temporarily suspended, or they are suffering from reduced income.
Okay. Yeah. If there is no basis on the because one of the requirements is the submission of a payroll, isn't it? And one who receives an honorarium is not necessarily in the payroll, and that being so, then there will be no basis for the DOLE to process a claim for the camp.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, if there is no employment relationship, meaning employee-employee relationship, the entitlement to camp is somewhat questionable, because it presupposes that there is an existence of regular or a continued employment that has been disturbed, or that has been abruptly, say, affected by this particular situation, such that the 5,000 or the camp that is being given is actually a temporary remedy to somehow give a little reprieve to the workers and tie their requirements in the meantime until such time that usual work resumes. Now, if there is no employment relationship that is long-term, meaning that is not only in a one-time basis, then I think there is no point into processing any claim for that matter.
Okay. I think this is a related question for Attorney Noel. The
Yeah.
question is, I would like to ask if carpenters and painters who get paid on a daily basis are eligible for camp.
Well, in the first place, you have to remember that the filing of the claim is being done by the employer. Now, if these carpenters or kung sabihin ng painters are employed by say a construction company or an employer, then probably they can be entitled to it. But if they're freelance, then I do not think that there will be any they will be covered by this particular arrangement by DOLE, because it presupposes, number one, there is employee-employee relationship that has been affected by the implementation of the ACQ. Now, if you are on your own, then there is no such thing as employment relationship that has been affected. Probably your livelihood, your usual livelihood will be affected by the ACQ, but not necessarily the employment relationship. Secondly, you have to remember that the current set of rules that we have presupposes the existence of employer-employee relationship. So I don't think that can be done for the informal sector unless the Department of Labor comes out with a particular pronouncement stating that informal workers will also be given reprieve so far as their financial requirements are concerned.
Maybe it could be the subject of a different regulation, especially with the passage of the Bayanihan Act.
Yeah, I think kung sa ano lang naman, Attorney John, I think you have TUPAD, no? I'm not so sure about the arrangements or the mechanics of TUPAD, but it gives actually temporary employment for those who have been, say, out of job for some time, no? So I do not know if the entrepreneurs, the freelance workers are also covered by TUPAD, but nonetheless, it only shows that even if the TUPAD program only shows that even if there is no more employment relations, so to speak of, that is existing, the department can still assist the workers. But of course, that is not for us to impose on them. No? I mean, to DOLE, they have to come out with that particular pronouncement on their side.
Well, you're correct, Attorney Noel, because the qualified beneficiaries under TUPAD are those self-employed workers and displaced marginalized workers who have lost their livelihood or earnings.
Yeah, so I think that's where they should be, assisted somehow. Should be assisted.
Yeah. Yeah. John?
Yes, Attorney Rico.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I was able to access this list. No, the other question assigned to me is that which asks, no, we have daily paid employees, especially workers on site project. If they don't perform due to the ECQ, is their pay treatment no work, no pay? Yes, that is true if there is no more favorable policy or practice in the company. Although note that Department Advisory number 9 series of 2020 issued recently in March, a few days ago, mentions about before you place people on forced leave, you might as well take stock of the fact that they have leave credits. And of course, it's one way of helping them if you give them pay and monetize these leave credits. No, in that regard, I'd like to tell our HR practitioners that the whole philosophy of these guidelines emanates from that very well accepted rule of no work, no pay. And so shortened work week, shifting schedules and the like, all accept the rule of no work, no pay. For the days, as in leave without pay, when you are not working, you are not supposed to be earning pay. But it's altogether different from imposing a reduction in pay. I've been, because I'm working from home, and a number of clients, especially those from abroad, are asking me if, in light of the emergency, which really is real, it's in fact a pandemic, can they then invoke the emergency to impose unilaterally a reduction in pay? I think it's clear in our laws that there is no legal basis. There might be abroad, but in the Philippines, there is really no legal basis for forcibly, unilaterally, without consent on the part of the employee, suddenly reducing the pay of employees. You have to convince them, no? Because otherwise you run the risk of, in fact, prosecution under the criminal penal sanctions of the labor code, because you are not supposed to deduct pay without the employee's consent, nor are you, in fact, allowed to even withhold this pay without the consent of the employees. No, otherwise you run the risk of criminal prosecution under the provisions of the code, and be punished with a fine and or imprisonment of not more than 3 years. No, so if you try to address this contingency, I'd advise everyone to take stock of the no work, no pay rule. Okay?
It's good, Atty. Rico, that you highlighted that, because there seems to be some confusing announcements based on news reports that supposedly there's this policy of no work with pay. Although, of course, under advisory number 4, the Department of Labor is encouraging employers to exercise flexibility and compassion in granting leave with pay. This is not really a legal obligation. Of course, we're asking companies if they can, they're able to do so, then try to come up with some way to pay their employees during the ECQ period. But still, the general rule, based on, of course, jurisprudence and even recent labor advisories, including DOLE advisory number 11, number 1, and number 4, is that it's no work, no pay. And the employer may apply in the meantime paid leaves. And after the paid leaves are exhausted, then the employees will be on leave without pay.
Attorney John?
Yes, Attorney Noel.
I'd like to, gusto ko lang susugan yung discussion na, because there seems to be some issues in so far as yung pronouncement ng Department of Labor in the media as compared to the issuances, no, na ni-release. Right. And I think we need to align this in so far as kung ano yung nasa batas natin para maintindihan ng mga workers natin. Because right now, I think the dilemma of our HR people is magkaiba yung sinasabi sa media, tapos meron din namang issuance that says otherwise. And then from a legal perspective, ano naman yung nararapat? Siguro una sa lahat, we have to consider na yung no work, no pay is actually anchored on the policy na a principle rather na there should be no unjust enrichment in so far as a particular person is concerned. I mean, you cannot earn something which you did not work for. Or wala kang ginawa, kikita ka lang. There's no such thing as that. No? Secondly, there's also some sort of parang confiscatory character kung sakali mang ipipilit, no, na ng isang manggagawa o ng gobyerno kunyari na pagsahurin yung mga manggagawa even if they're not working, because on the part of the employer, he needs to be given due process also, no? He's entitled to due process to say whether pwede bang gawin ng gobyerno yan or hindi. Now, having said that, ang sinasabi lang naman, I agree with both of you and with you and Atty. Rico na yung no work, no pay is really the policy, no? Regardless of whether daily paid ka, monthly paid ka, or in some other paid in some other means, no? Ang simpleng rason lang doon is kung wala kang output, wala kang ginagawa, then the company has no obligation to pay you your salaries. Now, yung pronouncement ng Department of Labor, kung babasahin natin yun doon sa kanilang mga issuances, it says that employers are encouraged. That means to say it is more of parang giving guidance, no? Na pwede ba yan yun lang pagsahurin nyo pa rin yung mga tao para hindi naman sila maapektuhan. But it's not really imposing that. Kung minsan lang, pagdating sa media, probably hindi natin alam kung ano yung mga circumstances behind some interviews. May mga lumalabas na pronouncements na hindi dapat pipilitin yung tao na mag-file ng leave. Which is true. Tama yun. Hindi mo dapat pilitin yung tao mag-file ng leave. But at the same time, kung hindi siya mag-file ng leave, then he cannot get paid as well. So therefore, no work, no pay applies. Meaning to say, pag hindi ka nag-file ng leave, you go on leave without pay. Hindi ka nga lang matatanggal by reason of, say, for instance, excessive absences without pay. No? Because there is a particular situation that is being addressed.
Mm-hmm. While we're on the topic of pronouncements in the news, I also have some slides on statements of Secretary Bello. So, for instance, employers are encouraged to release the 13th month or when applicable, 14th month pay of employees while work is suspended. Again, this is a request. Hopefully, kung yung mga people managers natin are able, our employers are able to do this, then well and good. But as of now, this is not really a legal obligation.
There's even one thing that I'd like to highlight also, Attorney John. I don't know if official communication Dione or what, but there was an internal memorandum from the department addressed, I think, to the Office of the President, advising the Office of the President of big companies that have already agreed to pay their workers while on ECQ, may 13th month pay na nire-release, so on and so forth. Well, people were saying, nandito na yan bakit ang binibigay nyo lang itong 13th month pay, ba't hindi libre yung sahod, mga ganun. And sometimes, yung iba, sabi nila, akala namin ganito na, tapos ngayon binabawi. The thing is, I think that needs to be clarified. The thing is, yung pronouncements, kung meron man, is general in character. Meaning, sinakop lahat. I don't think that all those 12 or 11 or how many companies na nagsabi na magbibigay sila ng konting tulong sa mga manggagawa have agreed na pare-pareho sila ng ibibigay. That's one thing that is very clear. No? And I think, kumbaga, in-announce lang yun ng department na merong mga kumpanya na nag-iisip na or meron ng ginagawa ng mga ganito. At the same time, hindi lahat ng nakalista doon ng mga relief, I think, ay binibigay ng lahat. Now, even to the point na sabihin natin na what if, for instance, merong ng deklarasyon yung isang kumpanya na magbibigay siya, then all of a sudden, nung tinignan niyo yung kanyang financials, looks like hindi niya kakayanin. Pwede ba niyang bawiin yon? In my opinion, yes. Because this is something that is not cast in stone. What I'm trying to say is, maybe kahit na sabihin mo, magbibigay ng pasahod ang kumpanya ng libre for, say, 1 month. But if the situation worsens, God forbids, aabot ng 5-4 na buwan, ibig sabihin ba yung kumpanya will have to continue giving what they have given already in the past? I don't think that can be used as a basis for people to claim na dapat meron pa silang entitlement. What is important here, I think the focus, and I guess this is how our HR practitioners should look into, no? Kung paano explain sa mga manggagawa is yung mga kanya-kanyang kumpanya nagbibigay, I think, ng konting tulong sa mga manggagawa. Hindi nga lang pare-parehas. Kung ano yung binibigay ng tulong, I think that has to be appreciated. Kung hindi nakakayanin ng isang kumpanya, we have to understand because it's not only the workers that are affected. The businesses are affected as well. Daming mga negosyo na nawawalan din ng income in the meantime. And then, at the same time, while nawawalan ng income, nagbi-bleed pa because, may commitment sila na magbigay doon sa mga manggagawa. So, siguro, kumbaga, as HR practitioners, kaunawa natin sa ating mga kasamahan na hindi lang yan na tipong one-way street. It has to be, intindihin din natin yung side ng mga employers, especially the smaller ones, no? Because the smaller ones are really very affected.
Okay, thanks, Attorney Noel. Well, I have some questions for Attorney Rico. Gaya ng nabanggit mo, Attorney Noel, no? Yung kasing instances na walang sweldo yung mga empleyado, ito nga sana yung gustong i-address nung camp financial assistance when the employees are on unpaid leave without pay. So related questions, Attorney Rico, meron ditong pinadala. If the employee is paid during quarantine, can they avail of the 5,000 peso financial support from the Department of Labor?
Okay, there is nothing in the DOLE rules currently that would disqualify employees of companies who are undergoing certain working arrangements out of the normal, because they have to address simply the COVID contingency or the emergency. No, if we go by the rules state that the company should file a report to the Department of Labor on the flexible working arrangement, whether this be a shortened work week, a work rotation, or a forced leave, and they file it 7 days before they implement. The requirements for camp are that the employer submits a copy of that report along with the payroll. And presumably, because there are no disqualifications, employers affected by the emergency, their employees would be qualified, no? But of course, we don't know how many will apply, and we've already heard the DOLE mention that they are giving priority to those who are really directly affected by this, those who are, as I've said already, based on the no work, no pay, those who don't earn pay, they don't have means to feed their families. And so their priority are the lowly daily paid employees of mostly the small and medium scale companies, no? And I think I've heard DOLE also say, although we can ask them later, that they being the priority, that means that those from the bigger companies, especially those who have been paid during the period until April 15, even if they might be on certain work arrangements that are not normal, they might be at the latter end of the line, no? And when the budget is exhausted, well, simply they just have to await further allotment from the national government.
I think there's a seeming conflict in the definition kasi of affected workers. Kung titingnan mo yung DO 209, yung definition ng affected workers, merong precondition doon na parang exhausted na yung leave or without pay siya. But in Labor Advisory number 12, binago yun eh. Ang sinabi doon, those who are affected by the, parang general statement na lang na anyone who is affected is covered by camp. Now, the thing is, that needs to be clarified because, for one, we know that government has limited resources insofar as helping the affected workers. No? And yung nga, sinasabi nila, ipa-prioritize. There are questions now from the side of the employees, especially for the big companies, mga multinationals, na sumasahod pa naman by reason of the current, under the current situation. But kung titingnan mo yung Labor Advisory number 12, because wala nang qualification on disruption of work or even in the earnings, lumalabas, they're entitled. So I think that has to be clarified. Because at the end of the day, what's important here, number one, is yung tao, hindi siya aasa na meron siyang matatanggap. Pangalawa, the Department of Labor will not be overwhelmed by the number of claims na kanilang tinatanggap and to process under the current circumstance. So, baka mamaya sa dami ng kanilang ipoprocess, hindi na nila kakayanang mag-process ng maayos, and then there might be some claims na hindi mapagbibigyan just because of the overwhelming number of claims that merong sila matatanggap. So, yung dalawang pronouncements na yun, yung DO 209, definition ng affected workers, as compared to Labor Advisory number 12, na definition then of affected workers, that has to be reconciled. And I think there has to be a definitive pronouncement on that.
But Noel, if I may, I agree with you because yung nilabas as flashed by John here, the affected workers are those who do not receive wages and the employment is temporarily suspended, di ba? But ang point is, regardless of employment status, so ang dami nun talaga. I don't know whether government is able to pay everyone who files a claim. No? So, mahirap mag ng false hopes, no, to give false hopes to our employees, especially those who have been paid up to April, di ba?
Yeah, good point, Atty. Emerico. In fact, yun nga, kung ang objective ng camp is to provide some financial assistance to employees or workers who are adversely affected, I think we need to manage their expectations na ang makakakuha muna siguro niyan, yun nga, yung those who suffer a reduction in wages as a result of the ECQ or any COVID-related situation. Lalo na yun din yung nakalagay dun sa Article 3, Section 1. Of course, there's this Labor Advisory number 12. But under Section 1, the financial assistance is supposedly used to cover the remaining unpaid leaves of the affected workers. In fact, some of our clients who have submitted applications with the Department of Labor, hopefully yung mga DOLE representatives natin na nandyan later para to provide further clarification. Ang sinasabi sa kanila, uunahin nga, assuming na qualified, inuuna nila yung small employees of the small and medium-scale enterprises because under DOLE Order 209, there's this request for large establishments to cover the full wages of the employees. So kung doon palang kulang na yung budget, baka mahirap mag-expect yung mga workers na nakakatanggap naman ng sweldo kung with pay naman sila during the ECQ period. It's unlikely, I think, that they will be given the 5,000 peso financial assistance ahead of those workers who are really adversely affected.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable assumption, Attorney John.
Wala pa ba yung mga kaibigan natin from DOLE, John?
Based on sa screen, no, parang wala pa sila, hindi pa yata sila nakakonect.
Po.
Ayun. Thank you.
Anna, and my name is Nikki po.
Good afternoon po. Introduce ko lang po natin yung yung mga DOLE representatives natin. So si Attorney Anna Dione nga po, Undersecretary, Regional Operations, Labor Standards and Special Concerns Cluster.
Magandang hapon, Usec.
Magandang hapon po.
Hello.
And si
Asec Nikki
si Asec Nikki po yata yung nasa screen, no? Si Asec Dominique Tutay, OIC Assistant Secretary, Employment and General Administration Cluster. So,
magandang hapon din, Asec.
Good afternoon po. Ma'am, mukhang kayo yung kayo po yung hinihintay namin na sumagot siguro muna doon po sa questions regarding the camp financial assistance. So, yung recurring question po is are those workers who are currently receiving their salaries, will they be entitled to financial assistance under Department Order 209 and Advisory Number 12, yung camp financial assistance of 5,000 pesos?
Kung yung if the worker receives his salary even covering the quarantine period, tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung sweldo, there is a salary continuance, then that worker is not qualified for the financial assistance.
Okay. Related question po, meron din mga nagsasabi na parang yung as worded, yung Department Order 209, merong brief mention doon ng MSMEs in the General Procedural Guidelines. And there's also this provision encouraging large establishments to cover the full wages of employees. But if the employees are really suffering from reduction in wages, kung wala po, no work, no pay po sila, hindi kaya ng large establishment na bayaran yung sweldo nila, will they still be given financial assistance under the camp? O uunahin ba talaga yung small and medium scale enterprises?
As it is, ang development po kasi ng sitwasyon ay very dynamic in the sense that every day the situation changes. So, yung financial assistance po covers all affected workers. So, yun pong affected workers means that there is a reduction in income. So, pagka ganun, entitled po siya. We just, in implementation, we prioritize yung workers in the medium, small, in the micro, small, and medium. But it does not mean na ma-exclude yung large establishments. So, sa ngayon po, yung directive namin sa regional offices is that we receive all applications regarding of application. We continue to process and evaluate them for payment na ho.
Okay.
Yun po yung directive namin ngayon sa mga regional offices.
Okay. May data po ba kayo kung ilan na yung applications and yung sa budget nyo po ba? Tingin nyo, is this just a matter of employees of large establishments waiting for their financial assistance pero meron namang sufficient budget? Or sa ngayon hindi nyo pa po masabi?
Itong data that we have is as of March 25, 6:15 po yung data na na-receive namin. As of now, we have 4,076 establishments that applied for this one, and then covering 161,769 workers. So ito po yung universe namin as of March 25. We believe na madadagdagan pa po ito as we receive applications. Maalala po ninyo that there is Labor Advisory number 9, wherein we are suggesting companies to adopt flexible work arrangements. Meron na po mga nagre-report doon. So, it does not, hindi po kasi one-on-one yon. Because we receive bigger, no? Slight lang naman. We receive bigger data like establishments that nag-report that they adopted any of the flexible work arrangements. We have 5,727, covering 236,740 workers, which means that there are companies that availed of the flexible work arrangements, but they may not have applied for the financial assistance. So, ganun po yung data na receive namin.
Okay. I'll let Attorney Rico ask his question later on. Just one last follow-up question from my end po. Usec, nabanggit nyo kanina mga 160,000 applications, no? That kung 5,000 pesos each, that already requires around 800 million pesos at 5,000 pesos each. Assuming that they are entitled, they suffered a reduction in income, or there are no work, no pay at this time. So, ngayon po ba may idea kayo kung yung budget nyo ngayon para dito sa camp as at least 800 million? Or may information po ba kayo?
We have this Senate bill. Ang kopya ko lang is Senate Bill number 1418. Before this was signed, we allotted internally sa department a budget for this program, which of course I'm not going to mention. And then itong Senate Bill 14, yung substitute bill na 1413, in the Department of Labor, nabanggit po dito yung dalawang programa, the CAMP, the Financial Assistance, and the BKBK, Barangay Ko Bahay Mo Sanitation Program. So, the substitute bill is specifically mentioned, and so we hope that additional budget aside from the internally allotted budget sa DOLE ay nabigay din po nila.
Okay. Atty. Rico, do you have questions for Usec Ana?
Well, Usec, yung budget na inaprubahan ho ng Kongreso at saka ng ating presidente na mga bilyon-bilyon na lathala sa newspaper, will that add to the budget of camp?
I think yes, part of it will be given to camp.
Meron na hubang mga detalye kung magkano yung idadagdag at kung mamarapatin nyo, magkano ba yung budget ngayon? Magkano pa idadagdag? Assuming may mga detalye tayo dyan.
As I was saying, before this bill, or before this, meron na ho kaming budget sa DOLE. Secret yun. Dito sa bill naman, 2 days ago, the Secretary submitted our requirement to the Interagency Task Force. So I think that's the only information I can give you as to how much and all. I think I'll have to withhold it at the moment. Basta,
Sige po. Papalampasin muna namin Usec in the meantime. Pero baka po kasi kaya kami interesado yung mga employees, ang tanong nila kung aabot ba sila dun sa budget or meron lang mapaprioritize. Atty. Rico, do you have one more question before we let Atty. Noel ask some questions?
Okay. Looking at the list assigned to me, there is this question. Ang tanong, pag po ba fixed rate, no work, no pay din during lockdown? Essentially, as I've said, the rule in our jurisdiction is no work, no pay, regardless of your status, no? Yun nga lang, pag sinabi mo fixed rate, may napag-usapan kayong deliverable, binibigyan ka ng fixed amount to work on it and deliver it to the employer. If there is a lockdown and you happen to be unable to deliver the committed service or product, then there is no basis also to give you the fixed rate. In a certain sense, therefore, it's also no work, no pay. Diba? Because hindi po pwedeng i-deliver yung deliverable, diba? Parang ganon.
Technically, yes.
Attorney John?
Yes, Atty. Noel.
Yeah.
Yes. You have questions for Usec Ana.
My question lang ko, Usec. Insofar as entitlement to camp is concerned, meron ba tayong pinag-uusapan dyan na position na kunyari rank and file lang or supervisory lang? Or lahat ba sa isang kumpanya all the way to top management are entitled? Because yung mga ibang tanong kasi na ibang mga empleyado nagtatanong, sabi nila, mas malaki nga ang displacement namin, mas malaki sahod namin, mas malaki yung nawawala eh. So that's the question now. Is it, may limits ba tayo kung hanggang saang level lang ang pwedeng ma-entitled?
Well, sa formal sector po kasi, on the concept of the program is really for minimum wage earners. But there will be discussions to may mga positions kasi na 1 peso more than minimum, so would they be excluded? And so therefore, ang hindi namin maisasama are the managerial level.
Okay. So what you're saying is hindi naman siya yung tipong minimum wage earners lang. Even if non-minimum wage earners, pwede pa rin so long as hindi siya managerial. Tama po ba?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Usec, another question po. Yung mga empleyado na kunyari lang on maternity leave, no? Or in some other form of leave, in the meantime, bayad sila. can they be entitled to camp? Meaning, bayad ka na ng maternity leave benefits mo, inabutan ka ng ECQ, can you be entitled to camp, to claim for camp, considering na may earning ka na?
Yun pong naka-maternity leave na naabutan sa period na ito, we are not including them.
Okay.
Full pay po sila for the entire duration of the maternity leave. Full pay po nila.
Okay. One last question, Usec. Yung submission of reports, no? Because I understand yung sa ating mga labor advisories and yung DO natin, may mention kasi for those who are undergoing temporary work arrangements, they need to submit the report on yung temporary work arrangements na yun 30 days before. Kaso inabutan na tayo ng ECQ. So yung iba nag-implement na even without the reports. First question is, kailangan bang mag-submit talaga ng report even if you're not going to claim for camp?
If you availed of the, if a company availed of flexible work arrangements, let's encourage a submission of the report, even if hindi siya mag-avail ng camp. Okay.
The follow-up question to that, Usec, can the reports be submitted through email? In the same way na may mga kumpanya ngayon na nag-implement ng redundancy, ng reduction of workforce, no? Layoff and everything. Ang problema kasi kailangang mag-notify sila sa Department of Labor, and some of them are saying that they cannot go to the office because yun nga may lockdown. So ECQ. Can the report like yung RKS5 at saka yung sinasabi po natin na flexible work arrangement, can that be submitted through email dun sa appropriate regional office?
Yes. In fact, ang submission ng reports ngayon lahat ay sa email. The submission will be through that email.
Okay. Thank you po. Attorney John.
Attorney Noel. Usec, Ana, two related questions po. Dun sa advisory, meron po tayong timeline, no? Once the application is approved, kung kailan ma-release. Yun po bang period, so far po ba na-anticipate nyo na masusunod o mas matatagalan pa ba yung pag-approve ng applications at pag-release ng pera? Second, related question, sa advisory and sa Department Order 209, supposedly DOLE yung magde-deposit sa bank accounts ng employees. Ganito pa rin po ba yan o may narinig kasi kaming ibang advice or informal advice from some DOLE officers na sa employer na lang papadaanin?
Yes. Number one, doon sa method, submission of reports through email. Yes, we did say earlier na yung pamamaraan ng pagbabayad ay through the company. As we observe and as we engage some employers, we opted to do this, no? Ganitong ginagawa namin ngayon. The employer will fill up the forms and require the payroll, and then through email, and then it will be evaluated by our people. And eventually, i-deposit namin sa individual accounts of your workers. How is this being done? Some companies give us the ATM account of the workers. So we deposit the amount of 5,000 to the ATM of the employees. The other method that we're doing is pagka walang sinadmit yung employer na ATM account, then we request that they provide us contact numbers. Nandun naman sa page 2 ng report na nire-request.
Mhm.
And we use those information to remit the amount through remittance centers, money remittance. If I may share with you, ang NCR, nakapagbayad na po tayo ng, as of yesterday, nakapagbayad na po tayo ng about 4,298 workers. Some of them, about 500, ay through our land bank to the different ATMs. And then yung iba, mas marami po, about 2,000. We are using Palawan as the money remittance. So nakita na po namin yung cycle na yun, and we are receiving feedback that workers are receiving them already. Pagka may isa pong nakatanggap, then in-text na ho yan po mga kasama. One of the things that we have seen is that yung company that sent us contact numbers, may mga ilan doon na hindi natanggap ng worker because yung number na binigay hindi pala updated. But what we do there is we contact the company. Actually, yung company nga nagsabi sa amin na bakit po ito wala. Then, mali pala or hindi updated yung number. Once they update, and then we drive Palawan, matatanggap nila. So, may konting bubuhol lang doon. As to how fast we do it, itong admittedly, itong week na ito, because it is the first week that we process and pay, because we were able to get some amount of money, about 200 million. So yun yung dinisburse namin. How fast? Natanggap kasi namin yun earlier medyo may lull period. But if what we have experienced continues, then for NCR, ako palagi sinasabi ko 1 week matatanggap nila. And today we had a meeting earlier this morning. Director Mirazol is saying that makakat yan As soon as we receive the application, they will process, hopefully complete siya in 2 to 3 days. Mailalagay sa bank account ng mga workers. We've also had a video conference with our regional. The other regions are also experiencing, but mabilis po kasi and CER dahil process nila. So we are actually we have started paying. For NCR, we paid yesterday for 2,000 workers, and this morning our regional directors of Cebu, there are about 4 regions na nagsabi, Region 3 na nagsabi na nagbayad na rin sila.
Usec, if I may mga concerns lang kasi na like some employees are not comfortable sharing their bank account numbers by reason of possible baka magamit daw sa bank fraud, no? Have you ever thought na kunyari once merong approval, it's the employer that will deposit this to the accounts of the employees subject to proof of say deposit or liquidation or receipt of the workers? Meron bang ganung arrangement po?
Sir Noel, yung unang portion hindi ko narinig, pero stable yata.
Ano po ma'am? Yung mga workers, some of them are a bit hesitant to share the bank details, no, yung kanilang bank account number because they're worried. Hindi naman sila nagdududa sa Department of Labor, ano. It's just that yung information kasi na yon that's somehow very personal and baka mamaya mapunta sa ibang kamay o yung data mapunta sa ibang kamay, baka magamit yun in bank fraud. So there's a suggestion na kung pwede ba daw na yung kung kunyari qualified yung mga workers sa isang kumpanya, magbibigay ng approval si DOLE na ganito karami yung entitled nito, itong mga taong to, and then yung company will be given such amount and then i-deposit ni company dun sa mga bank accounts ng empleyado, subject for the company to liquidate sa deposit to the department later on.
That remains an option. That remains to be an option maybe for bigger companies. Pero for bigger companies, may mga nag-indicate kasi na babayaran nila yung sweldo, so medyo excluded sila sa listahan. But should they apply, i-indicate lang ho ninyo dahil hindi naman po namin sinasara yung to the company.
Okay.
I'm just sharing you that as it develops, yun ho, because we receive a lot of feedback from companies na ganito po kasi yun eh. Skeletal force sila.
Yes.
Power. So, ang option po na i-deposit sa company is still open. You just coordinate with our regional directors.
Ma'am, wala naman po tayong deadline so far as filing of the claim for the claim for assistance, ano? Like kunyari, other companies would like to let the smaller ones submit muna yung sa kanila para hindi ma-overwhelm yung department and then submit yung claims nila probably towards end of the month or maybe early April. Wala naman tayong deadline ng gano'n.
Wala naman kaming deadline actually.
Okay. Thank you. Attorney Rico, do you have questions that you want to address or raise with Usec Ana and Asec Nikki?
Well, I just want to go through this list of questions given me, and if the others have comments, they can chime in. No? There is this other question on probationary period. No, the essence of these questions has something to do with can they extend the probationary employees down. I personally that because this was imposed on everybody, both the employers and the employees without fault of either of them, there is every reason to give, in fact, both the employer and the employee to for the employer to evaluate the work of the employee and for the employee to have a longer period to show his worth. No, I think the extension is for their mutual benefit. No, because in fact there are a number of cases already decided by the Supreme Court where the extension of the probationary period has been upheld, although in some cases it was because of the agreement of the parties. But the fact remains that the law gives both the employer and the employee a period of no more than 6 months to determine the fitness of the employee. And since we are in an emergency, this ECQ stopped everything. There is, I think, every reason for us to extend. Okay? Ma'am, pwede ho bang ganon?
Basta po agreement of the worker and the employer. And I'm sure they should agree.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they will be dismissed, ganun ba?
I think that should be the case because kung titingnan natin yung ating batas ngayon, kung ako si employer at medyo alanganin ako, nasa 5th month na ako, tapos naka-ECQ pa yung mga tayo, tapos hindi ko makikita yung output ng empleyado ko, I would rather dismiss him now. Diba? That's the most logical thing to do. So, pwede po ba yun na, kunyari, magkakaroon ng konting leniency insofar as this period is concerned na yung mga ganun, baka lang kasi biglang dumami ma'am yung ating mga complaints for lalo na dadaan sa Sena, no? Na yung aking probe period has been extended because pwede bang tingnan natin yung extension na yun, napapaloob ba yun doon sa ECQ na tinatawag?
Well,
Baka po pwede ma'am mag-issue kayo ng labor advisory para yung mga siguristang employer hindi muna mag non-regularization just to be sure. At least they have some level of comfort.
Yeah, para lang kamukha lang ma'am ng ginagawa ng National Labor Relations Commission. Lahat ng filings lahat ng filings doon in-extend by another 30 days. Hindi ba?
Yes, yes.
So, I think there's basis for that.
Yes, yes. Especially that one, ma'am, kasi ang mangyari po, pag hindi po tayo naggawa ng gano'n, I mean, this is just a suggestion from us, ano? Ngayon lang actually nabuo. Pag hindi kasi tayo naglabas ng gano'n, baka mas marami po tayong problemang harapin because so many workers will then be losing their jobs. Dahil sa kagustuhan ng employer na hindi naman siya mapaso doon sa kanyang kuan, hindi ko muna tawag nito. Tatanggalin ko muna, then rehire na lang kita uli. Parang kawawa naman yung worker sa ganung lagay. Pero I think this if ever mag-i-issue po kayo, this would be for those na kumbaga hindi nagtrabaho during that period. No? During the period the ECQ. Pag yung period ECQ nagtatrabaho pa rin yung manggagawa, wala tayong tinatawag na suspension dyan. Yun lang siguro po, it's just a suggestion from our end.
Naikit yata sa atin si Usec. For consideration lang po.
For consideration lang naman.
I-note nyo lang muna, ma'am. Sige po, i-note nyo lang muna para mapag-isipan ng husto for later.
Yeah,
yes. Ayan, natatawa lang po ako. Of course, you are all my friends. We are issuing a memorandum to our regional directors, basically to guide them para pareho yung pag-implement. Then, before I came here, may nagsasabi sa akin sa social media, and I was thinking, what has that got to do with them? A memorandum is towards our people. But anyway, now you're mentioning labor advisory. Naka-12 na kaming labor advisory. Anyway, I understand what you're saying.
I think, ma'am, it's really worth the issuance because marami pong mga tao ngayon na kumbaga in limbo din yung kanilang employment and we need to give them some sort of para bang psychological relief, no, na in the meantime merong recourse. Ibig sabihin yung employer nila they can extend their employment in the meantime kahit na sabihin mo for the period of the ECQ without terminating them, no, because if and when wala, baka the next thing these people will get would be a termination letter just to make sure na hindi sila maiipit.
Noted po, noted.
Okay, we'll give you second Asec some time to think about this. So we'll move on to the next question. Yung isa pong question na naka-assign sa akin, kung nag-resign yung employee before the ECQ but the resignation is not yet effective, will they be entitled to financial assistance under the CAMP? So tingin ko po kung resignation period na-reduce yung income nila dahil nga on forced leave sila during the notice period, dapat eligible pa rin sila sa financial assistance, ma'am?
More lenient naman. I think they will be included.
Okay.
Kanina, ma'am, we were discussing about yung dalawang programa ng department, ano po, yung CAMP at saka yung TUPAD, no? The question kasi that was shot by Attorney June was kung yung mga informal workers in the informal sector, will they be entitled to CAMP? So ang sinagot ko naman, wala pa po kasi kayo no at that time, no? Ang nasagot ko po was in the CAMP, meron tayong requirement for the employer to make the report. So if there's no employer, walang makapag-report. So therefore, ergo, wala silang entitlement dun sa CAMP. But nonetheless, yung TUPAD, that is for displaced workers din naman po, di ba? So if and when the employee, even if yung worker in the informal sector is able to show proof that indeed na-displaced siya by reason of this ECQ, then maybe the answer to yung financial requirements niya is not necessarily yung CAMP but rather doon sa tinatawag natin na TUPAD. Tama po ba yung ganung interpretation, ma'am?
In effect, yes. Ganito po. Basta si Secretary, ganito pong tingin niya. Pagka sector, formal workers, meaning there is a legitimate employer, sa CAMP po yan mapupunta.
Okay.
Workers that do not have employers but they are workers, then Yun po yung nasa informal sector.
Okay.
Yun po sila sa ang program natin ngayon ay tupad #BKBK. Barangay po ba? Sanitation program. So,
Thank you po for the clarification.
yun po yun. Ganun lang po yun. And then yung informal sector kasi, there are other assistance that they can access. Yung sa amin, yung sa DSWD, yung dun sa local government, if there are assistance.
Ma'am, meron lang akong isang nalimutan palang matanong kanina. Yung DO209, ang definition po ng affected workers doon requires merong displacement sa income. Pero pagdating sa labor advisory number 12, yung definition ng affected workers, nawala na po yun. Parang lahat na for purposes of availment ng camp. Gusto ko lang pong malinawan kung ano ba talaga ang ginagamit na criteria ng department in terms of yung pag-determine kung sino from among the workers are entitled to camp.
Okay. Affected meaning reduced income. Kasi yung period, 209 was before the Luzon-wide quarantine period. So yung DO12, Labor Advisory 12 was issued during the Luzon-wide quarantine. Ano lang naman yung Labor Advisory 12 just hopefully clarified some provisions of Labor Advisory 9 and DO209. Yun yung intention doon.
Okay.
John, in that regard, related to, mukhang maraming nagtatanong sa camp, can I just shoot some of these related questions? Yeah, okay. Ma'am, again on camp, tungkol dun sa application process. First, if a company, an operating company, has nationwide operations, saan ho ba mag-a-apply? Dun sa NCR regional office o sa lahat ng regions kung saan siya nag-ooperate? Pangalawa, para isang sagutan na lang ho, pangalawa, may timeline ho ba kayo in accepting applications? And lastly, once the application is approved, will the employer be at least informed before you credit? Yun lang po.
Yung first question, application.
Nationwide ang operation.
Okay. I think marami na nagtatanong dyan. Maybe we can issue a memorandum to our regional operations, but we have been discussing ganito po. You are referring to, dalawang grupo po yan ha. We are referring to the manpower agency providers. Yung manpower providers natin under DO, those that are accredited, registered under DO 174.
Pwedeng service providers, ma'am, pwedeng talagang, let's say, employer with nationwide operations.
Okay. Ano po yan? With respect to the manpower service providers who operates nationwide, they please meet their application where they are, where their head office is located or registered. So, kung siya magsasubmit, but kung halimbawa 5 yung kanyang operations outside of NCR, i-indicate po niya. Like for example, agency, ABC Manpower, i-indicate po niya doon yung kanyang mga tao. So, bawat deployment, isang application. But, all the applications will be filed in one regional office, which is where the head office is located. Yung naman po branches, meaning to say, may operations nationwide, pero may branches siya, and the branches may physical presence. Meaning to say, halimbawa, ayoko magbanggit kasi ng company. May spa siya sa Laguna, may spa siya sa Batangas, may spa siya sa Baguio, if it is, then pagka ganun po, doon sila with respect to its directly hired employees, doon siya mag-file sa regional office where the branch is physically located. Am I making sense?
Yes. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yun yung delineation natin because sa manpower provider kasi wala siyang establishment.
Okay.
So sa head office, kung saan yung head office niya, doon siya mag-file but separate filing. So halimbawa, 10 company yung dinadalhan niya all over the country, 10 applications din yun. But file in one regional office.
Okay.
Sorry, Emerico. Camp-related question din. I think may mga managers na nakikinig na nag-follow-up question. You mentioned managers might not be eligible. They want some clarification. Absolute po ba yung disqualification or is just a matter of prioritizing rank and file employees because they're saying they also suffered reduction in wages or in instances nga na naka-forced leave sila, no work, no pay din sila.
Yeah. John, bago sagutin ni Usec yan, meron pang dalawang aspeto yung tanong kanina. Yung timeline at saka will the employer be advised? Mas mabilis lang kung sagot si Usec. Ano kaya?
Okay.
We do not have a timeline kung pagbigay sa kanila ng sagot after the application.
That's the last one. The last question, pagka na-process na namin at i-deposit, even may approval konti kasi yon, so yung approval ng application will be sent to the employer.
So malalaman po ng employer. So yung isa naman po, yung timeline ng processing nyo, meron ho bang hangganan yung pagka-process nyo at more or less gano'n po ba kabilis yung between the application and the approval?
Well, I said a while ago that realistically about 3 to 4 days for the regions outside of NCR. Pero dito sa NCR kasi siguro mga 4 days, 4, 5 days, 1 week yun eh.
I see. So hindi naman ho siguro ito coterminous with the ECQ, no? Na pag tapos na ECQ, wala nang camp. Hindi naman po siguro gano'n, ano po?
For as long as we receive the applications within the camp, within the ECQ period.
So kailangan po ba yung applications ma-receive during the ECQ period?
No, actually, attorney, we haven't really discussed that, but we're thinking because leniency, there are companies that are not operating, so on and so forth. So we're open, pero hindi naman siguro hanggang December. You know what I mean?
Opo. Sige po, ma'am. Salamat po for the info.
That's good, ma'am, that you're allowing giving some allowance kasi nga, paano yung nangutang kasi hindi na-file yung application. Sorry, Attorney Noel, go ahead.
One last question lang. Ma'am, yung sa kanina sabi niyo branch office operations, tsaka yung isa doon yung sinasabi niyo rin na what's this yung manpower, ano? Pero there are certain situations, ma'am, na kunyari yung employer is based say outside of Metro Manila, pero yung ibang empleyado niya, probably sales personnel, diyan nakadestino sa Manila. So if for instance nasa Cebu yung employer, shall the employer file for those people affected in Manila, file it in Cebu? Ganun po ba?
Yes, sir. What I'm saying is, say for example, can I mention a company? Hindi ba tayo maano dito? Sinisenyosan ako na hindi pwede. When I say branch, say for example, XYZ company. Meron siyang branch sa Region 2. Meron siyang branch sa Region 3. So, yung branch niya, yung kanyang mga empleyado, yung kanyang mga empleyado that are naka-payroll doon sa Region 3, edi yun ang isubmit niya sa Region 3. Yung mga workers niya na naka-payroll in Region 2, doon siya mag-file. But
Okay.
yung mga empleyado niya na naka-payroll may be assigned to other places. Kaya nga po payroll-based yung aming requirement.
Okay. I get it.
Enrolled in Region 2, but maybe one day na-assign siya sa Region 4, back to 2, when you're talking about personnel, where the payroll is, doon siya.
Thank you po. Attorney John, all yours.
Okay. Thank you, Atty. Noel. So, ma'am, balik tayo dun sa questions ng mga managers. Meron din siguro kasing mga managers na kailangan din talaga ng pera, dahil hindi naman din ganun kataas yung sweldo. So, they're asking whether what you mentioned earlier, is it an absolute disqualification if an employee is a manager, even if they also suffered reduction in income?
Ang mga nakita kasi namin, I'm talking about the actual evaluation that has been done dito sa NCR, because ito naman yung accessible sa amin that we went to see it physically. Ang ini-exclude nila yung mga chief operating officer because it's in the payroll. Yung company president is in the payroll. Yung pinakamataas na manager nila is in the payroll. So, yun po yung medyo inalis namin. But I guess, kasi pa pong dito is minimum wage earner. I understand they also lose their, na-reduce income din sila. Pero basta yung chief operating officer, inalis na namin.
Okay lang naman siguro po yun. Baka po meron kayong some informal threshold na pag ganito yung income, hindi na muna, pero kahit manager, kung ganito lang yung amount ng monthly income, baka pwede pa.
Kasi meron kaming threshold actually. I'm not going to tell you.
Baka po mas maganda. Para hindi umasa yung iba.
Oo nga eh. May threshold sa kami. What's the threshold? You may suggest.
Naku, baka ako yung mapagalitan ng mga ibang managers na above the threshold.
Siguro, Attorney John, it's more of it's more really of yung nabanggit ni ni Usec Ana kanina, prioritizing yung mas nangangailangan. I mean, everybody needs money, of course, but merong mas nangangailangan kaysa sa iba. And it presupposes na yung medyo nasa lower echelon ng organization, yun talaga ang medyo kapos. So siguro doon magfo-focus. And again, as what I said earlier, even if for companies na probably qualified, ang pakiusap ko rin siguro from a personal perspective, wag muna nating basta-basta padalhan ng claim si DOLE. Pauna muna natin yung mga mas nangangailangang kumpanya, yung mga maliliit, para hindi tayo sasabay doon sa mas maraming, di ba? Maraming pinoprocess kasi ilan lang yung tao ni DOLE. I'm pretty sure not everyone's reporting forward. So pag dinagdagan pa natin yan, kunyari isang kumpanya, magpapadala siya 1,000 tao yan. Hindi siyempre lahat yan ipoprocess ni DOLE. Merong isang kumpanya, 2 tao, 5 tao lang, hindi malalagay ngayon sa alanganin dahil inuuna muna yung 1,000. So I think if we think that our workers ay hindi naman ganun kahirap na katindi ang pangangailangan. I'm not saying na hindi tayo magfa-file, pero let us try to, kumbaga, give others the chance, the first shot at it.
Good point, Atty. Noel. Saka baka po pwede yung mga employers na mismo, na kung of course, nasa payroll yung CEO, pero sa application, baka naman pwede. Para bawasan din yung admin work ng DOLE. Natanggalin na yun.
Thank you.
Atty. Rico, do you have other questions that you want to address?
Ang tanong lang siguro, ma'am, kung may mga tanong pang iba itong mga kasamahan namin sa PMAP, meron ho bang website or desk na makakasagot sa mga tanong nila by way of guiding them in addressing issues as we are in this ECQ period?
Gmail. Okay. That's all. We have created an email where questions specifically for camp and our Tupad program. Ito po, no? Maybe I can send it to you. camp.dole@gmail.com. So, small letters po lahat ito. The DOLE DNE isang letter lang po. camp.dole@gmail.com.
Opo, marami pong salamat.
Siguro, ma'am, baka pwede pong ano.
I-flash siguro natin later.
Kay ano siguro kay Miss Sarah kung
Sarah.
maibato yung email address para ma-post natin yan later. May isa pa akong tanong. Pwede sana sa
questions be addressed. Yes.
Yeah. Meron lang isang tanong, ma'am, tungkol sa itong ating ECQ, no? Right now, officially ang naka-ECQ talaga is yung Luzon. But some other regions, some other provinces are also, implementing their own type of ECQ. Ang tanong ko po, will the same rules apply kung ano yung na-issue na ng Department of Labor? Hindi lang ito applicable sa Luzon, but this would be applicable nationwide as the situation is applicable to them as well.
In that regard, Noel, may report ako sa Cebu branch namin. Malapit na daw yata mag-ECQ dyan sa inyo sa Cebu, di ba?
Yeah, Friday. Saturday. Meron na.
So, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, ano po? Nationwide po, iisa lang ang guidelines and applicable to all.
I see. Okay. At least malinaw po sa amin yung ano na yun. Para kasi yung ibang mga tao, they're wondering if this. Kasi yung iba may inaantay sila na parang trigger to claim for camp, which is yung ECQ. But given that it is ang definition natin is affected siya because of the COVID situation, then even if there is no ECQ, kung basta't naapektuhan yung kanilang trabaho by reason of this phenomena right now, ibig sabihin, pwede silang mag-claim ng assistance from the department.
Yes.
Thank you po. Thank you. Attorney John?
Ma'am, yung related naman po sa, although na-address na po kanina, we just want some confirmation from you regarding the unused paid leaves. Kung yung mga empleyado ayaw nilang gamitin yung unused paid leaves for one reason or another, baka gusto nila kasi no work, no pay to avail of the camp, and then sa kanilang nila gagamitin yung unused paid leaves. So will they be still entitled to camp if they opt to not use their paid leaves in the meantime?
Yes, they are. Kasi po yung immaterial po yung leave credits, whether they use it or not. Kasi po kanila yun
Thank you, Mama. Yung leave credits is immaterial for the availment or entitlement. Okay, thank you po.
Attorney Rico?
I'm good for now, although medyo meron pang ibang mga rito, but I think the bulk of the questions or the substance of the questions have been addressed.
Okay. Attorney Noel, do you have other questions that you want to address?
So far, wala naman. I mean, it's more of like yung may isa pala, ma'am, yung tungkol dun sa, this is not related to camp, but insofar as yung mga requirements sa mga checkpoints, nalilito kasi yung ibang employers, especially yung mga nire-require na tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung operations because may mga pronouncements na ang kailangan lang for the workers to be able to pass the quarantine checkpoint is for them to show employment certifications. But in some instances, may mga ibang requirements si DTI. Like sabi ni DTI, kailangan merong requirement from the other side of the fence, which is yung kung nasa supermarket sila, that this person or this company is also required to send people. is there any move on the part of government right now to consolidate at saka sabihin na natin ayusin yung mga requirements para isang documentation na lang po ang bitbit ng ating mga empleyado pagka sila papasok po sa trabaho?
Sir Noel, kasi sa part ng Department of Labor, we said yung ID, yung IDs nila, duly issued by the company. But in progress, nakita ko kasi natin, no, nagkakaroon ng problema. So sa ngayon po, our advice is that matter na yun is not being handled by DTI. No? DTI, kasi po, they're the ones supervising yung mga companies that are allowed to operate. And so, they're pati na po yung access ng mga workers when they pass the check. So, it's not naman nagbuhugas ng kamay thing. Para iisa lang ang nagmamando tungkol dyan. So, I guess that you have to coordinate with it.
Okay. Sige po. Salamat ng marami. For now, I'm good. Attorney John.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Noel. I think most of the questions that have been assigned to me are also have already been answered. Yung iba po, i-forward na lang namin kasi yung iba medyo related naman. I-forward namin later sa inyo, Asec, Nikki, and Usec, Anna. So, I'll just summarize some of the common answers to the questions, no? Yung no work, no pay, no? Wala na, yung doctrine of no work, no pay, as explained by Attorney Rico earlier, during the ECQ period, if the employer is not operating and the employees are on forced leave, then the principle of no work, no pay, based on jurisprudence and as embodied in labor advisories issued by the DOLE, still applies. The employer may apply the unused paid leaves of the employees, and then once the unused paid leaves are exhausted, then the employees will be deemed to be on leave without pay. But of course, the Department of Labor is encouraging employers to exercise some compassion, flexibility, generosity in trying to come up with measures to alleviate the plight of the workers. So walang legal obligation, but if they can come up with some form of financial assistance or some pay for the employees during the forced leave or leave without pay period, then that will be appreciated. There is also no obligation to advance the 13th month pay and 14th month pay, if applicable, of the employees. But again, employers are being requested, if they can do so, to help out the employees to advance the payment of the 13th month pay. Now, regarding the camp, again, the main objective is to provide financial assistance to affected workers who are suffering reduction in income as a result of the ECQ or adoption of some flexible work arrangements that result in reduction in work hours or compensation, or as a result of suspension of operations. So yun kaya po ang the Department of Labor at this time is trying to prioritize workers who are not being paid or who have received reduction in income. And according to Usec, Anna, so yung managerial employee, they are prioritizing minimum wage earners who really need the financial assistance. So in the meantime, managerial employees, although they have some form of a threshold, who are really earning relatively more than our minimum wage earners, are not really being given priority. The Department of Labor and Employment is also prioritizing employees of small and medium-scale enterprises, and they are encouraging large enterprises to pay the salaries of their workers. Pero wala naman pong sinasabi na you will also, if budget allows it, that you will not provide the camp financial assistance to employees of large establishments, especially if they're also minimum wage earners. The Department of Labor and Employment is also trying to follow the timeline for processing of applications and payment of claims under Department Order 209. So may period po doon, 3 days yung pag-process and a notice of approval another 3 days. Yung total po doon, kung pagsama-samahin natin, more or less around 1 to 2 weeks. And then that's their goal. Of course, at this time, mayroon pang learning curve. Yung first week of the application, there might have been some delay, but they're trying to fast track. And there's really no deadline for submitting the applications, but of course, it should be within a reasonable period, bearing in mind that the objective of the camp financial assistance is to help the workers during the ECQ period. Attorney Noel, Attorney Rico, baka meron akong na-miss doon sa mga
okay na yung summary mo, John, at I think magandang learnings natin ngayong hapon from all of us, and especially from our guests from the DOLE, Usec, Ana, and Asec. Tunay, maraming salamat po for participating in this webinar.
Siguro, Attorney John, maidagdag ko lang doon sa summary ninyo. Meron tayong proposition kanina na baka kung pwedeng mag-issue ang Department of Labor ng advisory relative to probationary workers, ano? Baga, pwedeng pag-aralan. At maidagdag ko na rin na Usec, bukod doon, may nagtatanong rin nga pala, paano pala yung treatment sa holiday pay for the coming Holy Week at saka yung sa araw ng kagitingan, because these are supposedly paid holidays. The day before, wala kang trabaho dahil naka-ACQ ka. So, this might be things that we have to consider. Kumbaga, baka gusto niyo mag-issue po ng issuance on that regard.
Can I make some clarification? Isa-isa lang.
Sige po, sige po.
With respect to the probationary period, what is the situation being contemplated here? Yung kanyang 6 months for the ECQ. Yung ba yun?
Yes, ma'am.
Part of the 6 months falls as part of the 6-month probe period falls within the ECQ, such that yung extension of the probe period might be necessary.
So it's a probationary period. Part of it falls under ECQ. Hindi lang pag 6 month niya falls under the ECQ.
It's pwede rin pong yung 6 month nasa ECQ, or di kaya yung kanyang probe period falls within that napapaloob yung ECQ doon, such that there's a need to extend. Yun po yung. And the other one, ma'am, is yung sa holiday pay, especially for the Holy Week and the araw ng kagitingan.
We will ask Doctors to study your request.
Sige po.
Salamat po.
Salamat po. By the way, I received a message from Committee Chair Attorney Wins. No, he's apologizing for not being able to attend, but he also would like to extend his gratitude, Usec Ana and Asec Nikki, for accommodating us and answering our queries. So thank you very much on behalf of the PMAP for your participation, Usec Ana, Asec Nikki, Attorney Rico, and Attorney Noel, and of course our participants. Thank you very much. We hope that this session was helpful. And a big thank you to our guests and to PMAP, and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Gandang hapon. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.